Prof, where do we currently stand economically?
Well, economically, things are not really that great. As you remember that with the last quarter of last year, 2019, we had a negative economic growth rate, and the overall annual economic growth rate for South Africa last year was at a mere 0.2% in a country where you've got a population growth rate of over 2.3%. And we have in South Africa more than 19 million people who are on various types of government grants, and yet we've got less than 8 million people who are paying individual taxes, that is pay as you earn. I'm not trying to paint a gloomy picture, but whatever we are going to say about our economy as it is now has got to be against that background. Unfortunately, the Minister of Finance, Ubaba Tito Mboweni, came up with a very uncomfortable budget that was based on austerity and cost cutting, but still trying to do something for the economy to see if ever it can be stimulated. Little did he know that within a matter of weeks after that budget, we are going to face this massive coronavirus, COVID-19 challenge. And that has changed all the projections then for this year. As we had yesterday, the governor of the Reserve Bank, Ubaba CHINAH, coming with a revised annual economic growth rate for South Africa at minus 0.2%, which means the economy this year is going to contract instead of growing. And with all these challenges, how will the government deal effectively with the coronavirus issue? To make things worse is that all the measures we've taken, they had to be reasonable, and under abnormal circumstances, you've got to make very unusual, difficult decisions. So the decisions, the measures which were pronounced by the Honorable State President on Sunday were very reasonable, but they are going to hit the South African economy hard. Let me look at some of them. Let me look at some of those challenges. We are saying that we must never have more than 100 people in any one place at any one time. Most of our factories and other places of the economy, you've got hundreds of people working there at the same time. Companies have got to plan for that. All the places of entertainment and all the places which sell or serve alcohol must stop selling alcohol at 6 p.m. during the week. And they must stop selling alcohol at 1 p.m. during the weekend. Now, you don't need to know a lot about the alcohol industry in order to know that this is just going to shut down most of those establishments. People abasebumnandini, people who really understand vibe. Ubumnandi, and that is a good time, only start after 8 p.m. So if ever you're saying then that you're going to stop selling alcohol at 6 p.m., it means it will never start. And then already those people are going to lose out on business. And then when you are saying at 1 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday, people who really know social life will tell you that people who are into good time, and those are the people who make who use a lot of money in buying those things. At 1 p.m. they are still struggling to get out there. In Sesotho they call it sklama, ipapalas. They are still trying to get over that hangover. They have not even started drinking yet at that time, and yet already the businesses must stop selling there. So which means business is going to be dead on Saturday and business is going to be dead on Sundays. And this is a multi-billion rand industry. I'm just making an example. And many of the resorts, hotels, etc. have had massive cancellations because of this. These are all reasonable steps which have been taken, but I'm just telling you about just one particular challenge which is wiping out a lot of billions, if not trillions, of our economy. So that's the state of affairs with our economy. We've got multiple challenges. At the end of next week, on the 27th of March, we expect Moody's International Credit Rating Agency to pronounce on the sovereign debt rating of South Africa. Many people have been saying for more than 3 years now, saying that we are going to be downgraded to junk status. I'm a person of faith, and I've always believed that faith and doing something positive can reap results. But even I am very uncomfortable that it is highly unlikely that Moody's may not downgrade us. But I'm still praying. And the reason why they downgrade us, it is because we have all these challenges with our economies really struggling, and yet at the same time you do have some of the stakeholders who should know better but who are not willing to play the game. You must remember what happened with SAA, South African Airways. We warned that South African Airways was facing bankruptcy. The workers went on strike. They never went back to work. They went to work for a few weeks, and SAA is effectively bankrupt as it is now, and they've been served with the Section 189 notices that there will be retrenchments. So as it is now, the government has said it cannot afford to pay the salary increases for public servants. In fact, it needs to trim down over 161 billion, not million rands. And some trade unions, especially now, is saying we are going on strike if ever you don't increase our salaries as from the 1st of April. I'm just highlighting, I'm not targeting trade unions here. I'm just highlighting a situation where the government has got to make some tough decisions and everyone has got to buy in. But when some of the stakeholders just still want to play their own games, not understanding that the Rome is burning, then we end up with the famous ruins, and they're going to be there forever. So that is what I can say about our economy.
Okay, are current trades with China shut down?
No, our trade relationships with China are still not normal. They're continuing, but you have had more than 85% drop in certain sectors, in most of the sectors, because you must remember that China is effectively limping because of this coronavirus. So their exports to many countries have come down significantly because there's very low economic activity there, and even importing things to that country is down because many countries are uncomfortable about sending things there, etc. So the Chinese economy is down, and they are struggling to, they are not going to do as badly as South Africa is doing, but because of this coronavirus, because it started there, it's really pushing them down. But we are still sending some things there, and we are still importing some few things from there, but the volume of trade is very low.
Okay. The textile industry has been hardest hit by the Chinese. With this little window, with what China is going through, what we're all going through with the pandemic, does this open a window for South African textile industry to pull up their socks and get in the market again?
I wish I could agree with you, but unfortunately I cannot. What killed the South African textile industry is not necessarily China. It is because the South African clothing and textile industry was very, 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 I want to use the appropriate word. They were not willing to adjust to changing circumstances. They still wanted to keep the very huge profit margins that they had before. And when they did that, then they could no longer compete. So China then flooded South Africa with their things. But you must remember, at one stage, South Africa imposed a 25% tariff on China just to protect the South African industry. That did not work for South Africa because people simply moved their purchases from China to India, to Taiwan and all the places. So unfortunately, I wish I could say our economy is going to profit something out of this Chinese thing, but no. Our clothing and textile industry must do their own thing to pull themselves out of that mess. Unfortunately, the players themselves, I mean, I had the opportunity to deal with many of people involved there. They are the ones who are comfortably purchasing garments and clothing from China and bringing it to South Africa and selling it in South Africa. So South Africa is its own worst enemy.
So looking at small businesses, which types of small businesses are most likely to ride this wave and survive beyond the pandemic?
As many sectors of small businesses will survive this. It's a question of people going for niche marketing. Okay, it will depend on how each one of the small businesses delivers to its customers. Those who are going to be good in niche marketing and look for clients that it can best serve under the circumstances will survive. What do I mean? Let us take like hotels. I've said we've had mass cancellations from hotels because of this. But some hotels may actually be able to ride the tide by making sure then that they can target some good customers who will bring in a lot of money but are not interested in being part of a big group, and are not going to be demanding things that cannot be delivered under the circumstances. I've told you about some of the latest regulations about liquor sales. So if ever you have got consumers who are going to go to hotels and say, well, we want to be there and we're not going to be demanding liquor after 6 p.m. during the week, we're not going to be demanding liquor after 1 p.m. on Sunday, and we will order some of our drinks to our rooms outside those hours, and we're not going to be troublesome. Then they'll make a lot of money out of that. So people must know how to tailor make their message, which is going to be in line with this, because this thing is not going to be with us for a long time. I believe then within the next 1.5 months, they will have removed some of the most stringent of these measures.
Okay. So hoarding of essential stock is a global issue, which South Africans have seemed to have adopted. There's shortages in supply, which might mean an increase in demand, which will then inevitably, if you go and try and buy those stuff, the prices are going to hike up. We noticed yesterday you can now report ridiculously hiked prices. That being said, does this open up the market for small manufacturers then to come in and supply the same stock in bulk at a lesser price?
Okay, I'm happy you've asked that question. Yesterday, the Department of Trade and Industry actually issued another regulation and some minor amendments to some of the legislation on the Competition Act. Under those measures, they have actually made it almost an illegal act for entities to try and hike prices during this time, and they've actually mentioned those certain categories like nappies, toilet paper was right at the top, because what has been found is that the people who are busy doing panic purchasing are not necessarily people who are well informed about how this thing works. Something happened in Australia. I cannot tell you what it was, but whatever that happened in Australia that led to the shortage of toilet paper is not an issue here in South Africa. So the whole thing of people going to purchase bulks and bulks of toilet paper is a wrong move by South African consumers. It is not a question of the suppliers trying to withhold their products so that they push up the prices. So many, if we can go to many of our main retailers, they have placed restrictions then on the number of products you can buy per product line, and that is going to help a lot. And then these people then who are deliberately pushing up prices, as you've correctly said, there are numbers that people, and that is easily accessible information, that people can report those people. And if it is found, then that it, because there's something which is called uncompetitive behavior, then if ever it can be found that there was deliberate uncompetitive behavior on the part of any of our service providers or retailers, etc., then they are guilty of breach of one of the provisions of the Competition Act and the Consumer Protection Act and various other consumer protection legislation. So let us be comfortable then that from what we have said from the product suppliers and manufacturers, there is no need for people to panic. There's no problem about the production lines that they have. It was just a question of people being overexcited and fake news spreading, and then people went to. So I'm giving you that long answer to simply say it is not that there is a shortage of goods then that the small companies can make use of. The people who may actually be guilty of some of the uncompetitive behaviors may be those small companies who would deliberately go to all those retailers, as we saw in social media, then buying those things in bulk in order to come and sell them back to the market.
What does the 100 basis points repo rate reduction mean to the ordinary South African?
Good question. Let us first start from thanking the governor of the Reserve Bank and his monetary policy committee members for having made this. This is the very first time that I've predicted that the South African Reserve Bank was going to give us a 50 basis point reduction, and they've come up with a bigger number than that, and we must be happy because the South African economy is struggling. So when you cut, okay, let me start by explaining in brief what the repo rate is. The repo rate simply stands for the repurchase rate. That is the money at which the major banks borrow money from the Reserve Bank. So when it goes down, it means then the cost of doing business for other banks is going to go down. And then the other banks pass that over to the end users through what we call the prime overdraft rate. And the prime overdraft rate is at 3.5% above the repo rate. So as the repo rate has gone down to 5.25%, it means the prime overdraft rate is going to be at 8.75%. So that is going to make the cost of doing business lower. But your question was, how does this benefit the poor? Because I've heard some people saying, oh, we don't care about the thing, that is just for the rich. That is not necessarily true. Because when the repo rate goes down, for those people who were wise enough to sign the variable interest rate contracts for their home bonds, then those people will immediately have their monthly installments reduced by 1%. That's a lot of money, regardless of how big or small your home loan is. For those with cars who decided to take the variable interest rate option, for them as well, their monthly installments will go down by at least 1%. And under these circumstances, when the economic situation is so tough, whatever money you save, you will be happy about it. And then someone will say, well, I don't have a house that I'm paying for, I don't have a car that I'm paying for, so how will I benefit? They will still benefit, because if the cost of doing business for general businesses goes down, those businesses are then in a position to give more discounts and even to just sell most of their wares at lower prices than in the past. Now this takes me to another thing, which we were happy with this 100 basis point yesterday, but there's another thing which is coming your way. Okay, what is going to happen on the 1st of April? We are going to have a very huge petrol price and diesel price cut. How do I know this information? It's not insider information, and I've not consulted the Sangoma. What happens is we calculate the price of petrol and diesel by looking at the crude oil prices internationally. The crude oil prices since the middle of April have gone down significantly. They've come down from over $60 per barrel, and this morning they were at $28.82. So you can see that they've more than halved. And yesterday at one stage they were saying the crude oil barrel was selling at only $25. Remember I said you look at the crude oil prices per barrel, and then you also we buy our crude oil in US dollars. The South African rand has lost significantly against the US dollar. However, because of this massive decrease in the international crude oil price, then when we look at the statistics from the Central Energy Fund, we find then that we may be in a position to have a petrol price cut of over R1.20 as from April, and we may have a diesel price cut of about R1.15 per litre. So with that, it means the South Africans are going to benefit a lot, because then the push for higher taxi prices or higher bus prices, etc., will be less. And secondly, because most of our goods are moved through the road, so if ever the petrol prices and diesel prices go down, then it means the cost of transporting the goods is going to go down. If that happens, then the end users benefit from that. So whilst we are complaining about all these other things, there are some things which are going right. Unfortunately, in life, we've got the good side and the bad side of everything. The negative side, unfortunately, of these low crude oil prices, which we are all going to benefit from, is that Sasol share prices have gone down significantly by over 85%. Why do we care about Sasol share prices? The point is Sasol employs about 400,000 or 40,000 or even 44,000 people. And if ever their share price goes down by over 85%, it means we're going to have massive retrenchments, etc., if this prevails. So we've got to empathize with those people, but in English they say one man's meat is another man's poison. That's how the economy works.
Awesome. Anything you'd like to add?
There's nothing that I can add other than that even those people who do not believe in prayer, these are the days that we must all really pray for the economy of South Africa. We must all be united in praying for that, and also increasing our productivity levels where we can. The days of South Africans always saying, we demand this, we demand that, we demand this, must stop. The days of the rampant corruption in South Africa must stop. But at the same time, we cannot just demand then that stops if ever we're part of the problem. So let us all say, what can I do for South Africa to be a better country economically, rather than saying, what can South Africa give me for free? Remember, there is one South American president who said, do not ask what America can do for you. Ask yourself what you can do for America. I'm saying the same with South Africa. There is a Tsonga saying that Mindiro yabulabula, which means imisebenzi iyazikhulumela, and that is, let us not say a lot about how we can make this country a better country, but let what we do as South Africans tell a story that we all care about this country. We do not want South Africa to be a failed state.